Hello, this is Richard Adams, State Representative for the 80th District, bringing you the State House Report. I'm representing all of Miami County and the southern portion of Darke County. This information that we're presenting today will give you a better idea of what's going on in Columbus as far as state government is concerned. I thought you might be interested in some of the things that have been happening lately. For example, we now have a panel of 19 individuals that will be studying the criminal code. Now, this hasn't been done since 1971. Now, that's several years ago, and there's no doubt we need to do this. In fact, it's long overdue to make sure that the penal code that we have here in Ohio is responsive to the conditions, the needs for good law enforcement, and appropriate punishment for those individuals who have committed an infraction or a crime. This is not really to tell judges what they're going to do, but it does take a look at terms of the options or the parameters that judges will have as they fulfill their responsibilities. The final budget bill, of course, now is passed the House, and this will be going into effect once it's signed by the governor. In fact, I would anticipate that the governor's signature may even be there by the time you happen to see this. Budget bills are effective when the governor signs them. All other bills are not effective for 90 days, but anything that spends money goes into effect right away. Some of that's due to the fact that we operate on a 2-year budget, and the year that we adopt the full 2-year budget, frequently that's not done until even late at night on June the 30th, and it goes into effect July 1. So it's important for that bill to go into effect so that the state of Ohio can meet its payroll and also pay its bills. Now, the budget bill that we have worked on for several months now is called the Mid-Biennium Review. I think it's a good thing. This is the second time we've done this. Basically, it means that we take a look at that 2-year budget and see what needs to be modified based upon changing circumstances, additional information, or just those things that may have happened that causes us to know that the budget needs some tweaking or some fine-tuning. For the most part, that's what is involved. Just a matter of adjusting the budget based upon the fact that we've had it in operation for a year, and keep in mind, the state has a fiscal year that starts July 1. So we still have another year or so to go in the biennium budget. But the mid-biennium budget review enables us to take a look at our budget and make those changes that are necessary. Any of you, even with your household budget, or if you're in business, you may have an annual budget. You know it's difficult sometimes even to have an annual budget, and to have a 2-year budget is even more challenging. We had a bill in the House that is going to restrict the cost of some of the drugs used for chemotherapy. If you've had chemotherapy in your family, or maybe even yourself or a friend, you're aware that some of it is very, very expensive. Now there needs to be justification for what that expense might be, and I imagine we'll still have some drugs that will remain very expensive until the cost of all the research and development that has been expended has been repaid, and then we'll go to a more generic approach. There's been a bill. You may think this is inappropriate. I was in the education business for several years, and I know a lot of educators, and some of them think it's inappropriate. But this bill's been introduced in the House. It hasn't become law by a long shot, but introduced in the House that would require every high school graduate to have CPR training. I know that's an acronym. I'm not sure what it stands for. But basically, someone's having a heart attack, you give them this CPR, and frequently their life may be saved. This would be a lot of people who would be proficient in administering this. It's kind of like the Heimlich maneuver, you know. For a long time, there were some who could do the Heimlich, and You may recall that's when someone chokes on a piece of meat or something like that, and you come up behind them and you put your fist with your other hand over it in their lower abdomen, and you give them a quick tug and pushes on the diaphragm, and whatever's stuck in their throat should come out. Well, this would mean that we would have a lot of people who would be familiar with how to do this. I don't know if this is something that needs to be updated. I don't know if it's something that students might need remediation for. It's a major bill as far as I'm concerned. I like the intent. The more people we have who are capable of helping a person who's having a heart attack, you know, that's fine. Or maybe somebody who has drowned, you know, that's fine. But still, every student must become proficient in order to graduate from high school. I'd be interested in your opinion. You can reach my office and let me know if you think it's a good idea or you think it's a bad idea. It will, we have plenty of time. It's going to be a while before it moves through the legislative process. Sometimes I become frustrated with how slowly legislation moves, but there's probably a good reason for that, because some of these bills need what I've called seasoning. You know, they need to kind of be around for a while, and we need to look at it from the various aspects, and also make sure that everybody in Ohio that has an opinion or a viewpoint can express that, or even come over to Columbus and attend one of the hearings. Speaking of bills and legislation, I want to digress for just a second. Molly Green is a fourth grader at Piqua Catholic School in Piqua. She sent me a letter, and she said, now we've got an official state snake and an official state amphibian. We got an official state song. We've got an official state this, that, and practically everything else you can think of. She said, why don't we have an official state candy? Good question. She said she would like to have an official state candy, and would I take care of that? Well, I wrote Miss Molly Green back and said that I was interested, but I'd like to come over and talk to her and her class about whether or not they wanted to help do this. So I went to Piqua Catholic. By the way, they've got a great teacher there. She is very impressive, Miss Wagner. She makes great Buckeye candy too, I might add. Anyway, the kids, what they wanted to do was to have the Buckeye candy as the official state candy. I like Buckeye for candy. I don't know. I know some people, of course, may be allergic to peanuts, and consequently they cannot take or cannot eat Buckeyes, but I think they're great. So we talked about how an idea becomes a bill and how a bill becomes a law. And after I told the kids all this, I said, now you need to decide if you want to do all this work. I said, I'll help you, but I can't do it all myself. I need people who will come over and testify and take an active role in promoting this. By the way, when Molly sent me that first letter, she had petitions with 304 signatures on them. Well, that was great. And I think it's important that kids learn more about their state government, and so I'm glad to work with them. This will be a good educational opportunity for them. So they immediately said, well, you know, hard work doesn't bother us. We're not scared of hard work at all. We'll help and do everything we can to make sure this bill becomes law. Well, I got back to Columbus and introduced the bill. I have 7 other legislators who are co-sponsors of the bill from literally all over the Ohio, both Republicans and Democrats. And then I received a memo that there's a candy company in Bryan, Ohio, I think it is, who are opposed to this. Why? Because they make dum-dum suckers. Have you ever heard of a dum-dum sucker? I think I have. Anyway, they're of the opinion if we're going to have a state candy, it ought to be a dum-dum sucker. Well, I don't know. In any event, here's what we're thinking. So we don't offend a commercial company that makes this and has a payroll of people, and And, that's their business, and we certainly don't want to cause any business a problem, even though I'm having a little trouble perceiving what the problem is. We're thinking of modifying this bill before it's even had its first hearing, and it would become the official state homemade candy. I like that. I don't know how many, but would there be thousands of kitchens across the state of Ohio where they make Buckeye candy? I imagine there is. I know my wife makes them. A lot of people make them, men and women. So, this kind of appeals to me. This may be even better than being the state official candy to be the state official homemade candy. So I'll keep you posted on this as it moves through, but I'll tell you, those fourth graders were very impressive. I think they're going to be all outstanding citizens, and I'm glad they're interested in state government even in the fourth grade. Well, let me go on and talk about some other things that have been done. A bill is moving through the House. In fact, it's passed the House, went over to the Senate, that would require parental permission, written parental permission. And I think even the parents need to come to the tanning salon if the youngster wants to avail themselves of the services there in a tanning salon. And I think there may even be some involvement of the physician needs to be aware of this too, because apparently there might well be some people who would want to go to the tanning salon, but might not do it in a way that they should. And so it's probably going to, I know the State Chamber of Commerce, they have opposed it. And but at the same time, a lot of physicians, including the Ohio Medical Association, they're concerned about this. And the individuals who own these tanning salons that I know are very conscientious, and they want to do what's best for all of their clients, including their younger clients. We have up in Darke County a deputy treasurer in county government who embezzled almost $3 million. Amazing. I know in Miami County, or Darke County, or any of the places over in Western Ohio, the people involved there, if $30 would be missing, they'd be up after it in a hurry. But $3 million, and so this just provides some penalties, including loss of job, for those individuals who might embezzle and take public money. Private religion classes, new legislation there that would allow a school district, if they want to, a public school district, if they want to, and parents, if they want to, this is not a mandate, if they want to, they can give high school graduation credit up to 2 units for any religious instruction that they may be receiving. And let me see, a couple more here. Here's another bill. I don't know. What good is it to have a bill passed into law if our fine law enforcement officers can't enforce it? And I think that's what this bill's all about. It changes the driver license requirements for 16 and 17-year-olds in terms of who has to be in the car, what time they can drive, there's a curfew involved, the list goes on and on. I think the sponsor of the bill means well, because there's no doubt when you take a look at fatalities on the highway, a lot of them are the 16, 17, relatively inexperienced beginning drivers are involved. So we've got a lot of work to do on that bill, and although it's been introduced in the House, and it's had a couple of hearings, it really hasn't moved out of committee yet to the floor of the House. We have another one that's interesting here. Frequently, for whatever reason, businesses might overpay their withholding tax for income, and up until now, whether or not they even knew about it was subject to question. and certainly the refund was not done in a quick way. So this law simply says to the Department of Taxation, if some business overpays their taxes withheld for income tax for their employees, as soon as the tax department realizes this, they must inform the business and they must send a check for whatever the overpayment might be. You know, not many bills pass in the House unanimously, but this one did. Everybody thought that this is, to be fair, this is what ought to happen. I know with the warmer weather, a lot of you are probably thinking, hey, it'd be great to get the kayaks out, or a rowboat, or a canoe, or the pontoon boat, or whatever you like to have to enjoy the lakes and streams here in Ohio. Just wanted to mention to you that we have already had 11 deaths from boating. Now, last year we only had, I think it was 11 or 12 all year long. And here we are kind of early in the season, and we've already had 11 deaths. So, you know, 9 of the 11 did not have a life jacket on. So if you're going to be out boating, enjoy it. It's great. It's fun. I like canoeing and kayaking, but you need to have a life jacket on. So be safe so you don't be sorry. If you're going to be out on the water, follow all the safety rules, including when it should be appropriate to wear a life jacket. Well, the voting regulations in Ohio continues to be in the media, and we made some modifications. And I'll start with those modifications, and then I want to talk about a federal judge who decided what's constitutional and what's not constitutional. Let's get started with the new rules. In the November general election coming up this fall, every Ohioan will have 4 weeks. Now, this is assuming they're registered to vote. Now, you need to take care of that. And if you're not registered, you need to go do it. Go down to the Board of Elections, and you can get registered. It's easy to do, won't take long. If you're not registered to vote, you ought to get registered. And if you've moved, you ought to let them know about your new address. Those are 2 things that we as citizens have a responsibility to do. And frankly, voting is important, and I don't think it's too much for any of us to ask to go down and register and make sure that when we move, we have the change of address card filled out for our Board of Elections. But every registered voter will have about 4 weeks to vote prior to Election Day. Now, any of you watching remember when we had Election Day to vote? That was it. Well, you could get an absentee ballot if you had a good reason, but you were expected to vote on Election Day. Now you can start voting in person or by, it's not an absentee ballot, I guess we still call it, either one of those ways, about 4 weeks before the election. Or you can do like I do and wait until Election Day and go vote then. You know, I want to wait until the last possible minute just in case there's a little more information comes out that might cause me to want to change my vote. 4 weeks we've got to vote. Now, there's a uniform schedule of voting in terms of the hours, the days of the week. All of this has been put into place. This was a recommendation of the Ohio Association of Election Officials. Now, this is a group from all of our counties who are either an administrator for the Board of Elections or members of the Board of Elections. And half of them are Republicans and half of them are Democrats. So this is, you know, this is about as nonpartisan, or maybe better said bipartisan as you can possibly get. This was their recommendation. You know, who knows better how to conduct elections than the people who are conducting the elections? This was their recommendation. Keep that in mind. Plus, 28 days to vote. not quite 28 days to vote before the day of the election. Compare that to the national average of 19 days. And compare that to some of the states surrounding Ohio. They don't have any early voting. They're still requiring people to come vote on election day. Well, this all has been challenged. Basically, there are some people who are saying this is voter suppression. Now, it's hard for me to understand that, but this has been said, and we don't even want anybody to think that, much less have it to be an actuality. We want to make sure that everybody can vote, well, and only vote once. That's the plan. That's what we want to do. But there's a federal judge. This federal judge said this isn't constitutional. And he premised his decision that you need to be able to vote Saturday, Sunday, and Monday before the actual election day. Now, all these election officials, it's a job. You know, I served on the Board of Elections for about 7 years. It is a job. I bet many of you, well, I'm not going to bet, but I imagine that many of you work for the Board of Elections at one of the polling places. We couldn't do it without you. We have some 320 people who are actually, you're not volunteers, you do get a little bit of money, but you know, for the long day, it's not enough money. You're serving your community, you're serving your county, your school district when you are a poll worker, and we appreciate it, and I want you to know we appreciate it. But this judge said, in Ohio, you let military personnel vote on those days. We've got military personnel all over the place. Everywhere, the Army, the Navy, the Marines, the Air Force, the Guard, you name it. All members of the military serving everywhere in the world. We've got Ohioans in all of those groups. It takes a little longer to get a vote back from Afghanistan or any other place beyond the United States. That's the reason why we give our military personnel more time. But this judge indicated if you're going to give them more time, you've got to give everybody more time. And I want to tell you, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday before election is a busy, busy time. First of all, we've got to get all those computerized machines in all of the locations and all the polling places. We've got to get all of our paperwork done. We've got these books that we keep that show who has voted absentee, who hasn't. So you can't vote absentee, or you can't vote early and then come back on election day and do it again because you've changed your mind. No, you can't do that. So, you know, I have a lot of admiration for our judiciary, but to have one federal judge say this is the way you ought to do it in Ohio, I think we ought to take another look at it, work out something so that we can be sure that our election officials have an adequate amount of time to get ready for the election, and still make sure that everybody who wants to vote has an opportunity to vote. It's the most important thing we do as a citizen. And I might add too, if you're going to be a voter, and I hope you will be, you need to make sure that you know what you're voting on. What good is it if you don't study the issues? You know, the media does a great job of publicizing all this. You need to decide who you're going to vote for. You need to decide whether you're going to vote for a levy or anything else that may be on the ballot well before you get there to vote. So just don't go in and vote and play tic-tac-toe. Go in there and vote knowing what you want to vote for and for whom you want to vote. That's our obligation, I think, as a citizen. Going along with that, voter fraud is something that we don't want. We don't want any voter fraud in the state of Ohio. Not one, no. Well, we have some figures on voter fraud. In the General election 2012, keeping in mind there wasn't a lot on the ballot in 2012 at the general election. We had 115 fraud cases. Well, that's not many in the state of Ohio, but one is too many. We owe it to you who follow the rules, follow the laws, who vote, to make sure that we don't have somebody that's voting more times than one, for example. That's usually the biggest example of voter fraud. And the counties where most of this has taken place, Cuyahoga County, that's Cleveland. Delaware County, I think that's what, Westerville? Is that in Delaware County? Erie County, that's up north. Fairfield County, Hamilton County, Medina County. Now, there's some that were kind of in the middle here. They had a few, but not as many, like Allen. I'm just going down here looking at some that might be close to us. Montgomery. And then there are some that just had a tiny bit, maybe one or two cases. All Glaze, Greene, those counties. It's nice to know that 60 counties didn't have any. And I'm proud of Miami and Darke County because we were two counties, we didn't have any. So good for all the people and work for the boards of election and help conduct the election. You did a good job, and I think it's a compliment to all the citizens of our two counties. There's going to be some state issues on the ballot. May not make it this November, but they'll be coming. For example, there's an outfit called Freedom Ohio. I'm amazed at the number of these statewide organizations. This is Freedom Ohio, and they're starting to collect signatures on the repeal of the state's same-sex marriage ban. You know, we passed that, I think, what was it, 2006, something like that? Well, anyway, they want to put it back on the ballot. May not make it in 2014, but they think they can make it in 2015. Then there's another one called Equality Ohio, and they're going to intervene in a federal case that would require Ohio to recognize gay marriages performed outside the state in order to allow gay couples to get married in the state. You have to decide how you feel about that. Everybody is entitled to their opinion, and we got people who think okay, and we got people who say no. That's something for you to consider. I'm just giving you an idea that this is something that you ought to be thinking about because it's going to be coming up for a ballot. Some good news, the Ohio Department of Development are going to invest $88.5 million in doing some things at our state parks. Great, good news, fantastic. Especially since gasoline is what many of us might consider to be real high. It's nice to be able to go to a state park, a state lodge, not so far from us here in Ohio, and enjoy all of the things that can be done there, fishing and hiking and bicycling and swimming and boating, you name it. There's just a lot to do in our state parks. And we, for the first time in many years, are going to be investing some money, not making them bigger necessarily, but just repairs, making sure that they're accessible to the handicapped. That's a big goal. So it's good news, and I would encourage you to check out what the state parks have available. Money, the tax money's coming in to Ohio a little higher than what we estimated. That's good news because it indicates that our economy is continuing to improve. We're still a little bit cautious because remember we have a 2-year budget. So as we get to the end of this fiscal period, we want to make sure that we can't borrow money, we can't print money, so we're going to have to be careful that we keep the books balanced. It's about all the time I have. So finishing on that note of a balanced budget in Ohio, next time we meet, I'm going to be talking about our efforts to have a balanced budget in Washington. Tune in the next time. It's been a pleasure to bring you the State House Report.